Unfortunately, the session 2 didn't record, so I'm having to re-record today, which is why we've put it live on Facebook as well. So this is part of a project we've been running with Meat and Livestock Australia. It's a PDS project, and it's looking at trying to compare different rams that have more or less reproductive potential in terms of how their daughters will perform. And so looking to demonstrate how selecting on the right information can improve the reproductive outcome of ewe flocks out there. So this series has been completed by myself and Dr. Gus Rose, is the manager at Sheep Genetics. And so Gus was with me talking through these sessions. He's not here today. I'm just re-recording this session because we lost it on Zoom, first time ever. After a couple of years playing around on Zoom, we've lost a recording, which is anyway, these things happen. So just re-recording it. Just a reminder that the genetics of repro and lamb space on the hub is the place where the opportunity to talk through all things breeding for more lambs. So yeah, the hub.nextgenagri.com. Check it out if you haven't been on there already. A fantastic resource that we're building all the time. So those that were involved in the course and were asked to do this homework, and we talked through those results. A few people did them, and were keen enough to put them on the hub, which we appreciate. And that really was just a bit of a refresher. Go back through your ram team and think about what it is, how good they are for their reproduction outcomes. So in the workshop, we covered things about, we had a chat with each other to talk about our ram teams and whether we thought about our current ram teams and how we might change that. Pretty much most ram buyers are in 4 different camps, and they're in different people will be in different camps. There's a group of people that are really happy with their ram breed and have access to all the information they need, and they're obviously happy campers. The second group that are happy with their ram breeder, really keen on the sheep type, but probably looking for more information on the rams than they currently get, but will stay the distance and hope to get more information as they go. There's a third group that are happy with the type and the ram breeder and really got a great relationship, but just have struggled to get the information they need and are looking for a new ram breeder. And then there's a group of people out there that are changing type or just changing breed even, that are just looking for a ram source that has the type and information that they're after. So they're the 4 sort of camps that most people we find are in, and you'll be able to slot yourself into one of those camps. We spoke last week on this course, or the first week of the course, about the breeding values for reproduction and the new ones, and we ran through a tour around Sheep Genetics website on how you go about searching. We'll drop another video onto the hub on that search process. We'll do that. We'll do that today and load it up on the hub. But really, yeah. So if we are chasing for reproduction in our sheep, then the new breeding values are a great way to go about that. The number of lambs weaned breeding value has been split into conception, litter size, and ewe rearing ability, which is the sort of ewe's contribution to lamb survival. So great opportunity there to really find sheep that are not just good at reproduction, but are good at reproduction in the things that you're focusing on. And again, we'll do that search and show you through that and load that video up. There's a group of people out there that, and there's a pretty big group of people out there, particularly in merinos and maternals, that are trying to chase extra lambs, but they're with a ram breeder that doesn't currently supply the information that they need. It doesn't, maybe not calculating, maybe not generating the right information, and they're trying to improve reproduction, but really don't have those great breeding value tools to do that. And so the second session of this course was all about what you do in that case. And so there's a whole range of things, and one of those things is you can ask the ram breeder if they record which of those rams are born as a twin, and so while buying twin born rams doesn't guarantee you'll get reproduction, it does slightly improve the reproductive performance of the daughters of those rams. So there's a group of sheep here. These are out of Merinotech, Western Australia. it's a whole heap of data from that flock. They've recorded a lot of things for a lot of years in a really accurate way. On this axis, on the phenotypic reproductive performance, that's what they use on average, how many lambs they've produced across the number of lambings that they've had. On this axis is the number of lambs weaned breeding value. So what you see is that here we've got a whole group of ewes that are phenotypically been twinning, but there's actually quite a range in their breeding values. So some of them are actually negative for their reproductive breeding values, and some of them are very positive. And that's this data. The breeding value is taking into account what's happening with their sisters and their mother and their aunties and all the other female relatives in the flock and in other flocks, and taking that all into account so that the breeding value is way more accurate. So if you do just select on twins, you'll see that line is going up. So you are more likely to genetically get a higher reproductive ram, and therefore get some of those genes into those daughters. But there's also a lot of blur around that, and the accuracy of that selection is way higher if you actually use the breeding value. And that's kind of been the point of this discussion, really, for the 3 courses. So what is correlated with reproduction? So if you're in that camp and you don't have reproductive breeding values, and you're looking at what traits I could select for to try and get more lambs in my ewes, growth is the first one. Weaning weight, hogget weight, yearling weight, breeding values, all of those are favorably correlated with reproduction. We know that big sheep have more lambs, and that's both phenotypically and genetically true. We also know that if you select for more fat, you'll get more lambs. If you select for more muscle, you'll get more lambs. If you select for less wrinkle, you'll get more lambs. If you select for less face cover, you'll get more lambs. And that's the muscle and fat bit is all tied up with condition score. So there's a range of things we can do to improve our reproductive outcome. Again, we've been focusing on those breeding values. If you have got them, use them for reproduction. That's the best way to do it. These other things also have other positives and benefits that we build into our selection strategy. So just honing in on that growth correlation a bit. This is just phenotypic correlation here, not genetic, but these are 2 different flocks and a couple of different age groups of ewes. These are New Zealand flocks. And as ewe weight at mating goes up, the lamb scan per ewe Jordan goes up. So different slopes, which is sort of nuance between those different flocks, but whatever flock it is, the heavier they are, the more lambs they'll have. If they're heavier through their genetics, the more lambs they'll have. If they're heavier through how you feed them, then the more lambs they'll have. It's got its negatives. Obviously, the heavier those sheep are, we're trying to select against adult weight if we can do that, and we can do that, but we're trying to balance that out. So that's not something you can just do for infinitum. You can't just keep making them bigger and get more lambs, because eventually you've got massive sheep that are less productive on a per hectare basis. The condition score 1 is really interesting. We know this through nutrition and through experiment after experiment. We've shown that the higher the ewe condition is, the more lambs they'll have. These are maternal ewe lambs out of Tomo's work at who's analysed Cashmore Oakley. Maternal ewes out of the Lifetime Maternal Project. These are merino ewes out of Austral Park, out of our Lifetime Wool project back in the early 2000s. So they're kind of more of a wool-driven merino. We've got some sort of more reproductive merinos. Merinos have been selected more for lambs that are sitting up here now. But generally, it doesn't matter which genotype it is. The more condition they've got on, the more lambs they're going to have. And so you can build that condition either through feeding or through genetics, and that's why fat and muscle are favorably correlated reproduction, because it ends up that those ewes are in higher condition score and end up having more lambs. And so it is highly correlated. So Isabel Tate, who's no longer Tate, that was her pre-married name, but Tate, Isabel did that work through our data out of New Zealand Merino, and found a very high correlation between condition score at mating and the fat and muscle of those animals. There's different publications with different numbers here, but they're all very positive and very favorable between fat and muscle and condition score. And that's really the driver. That's why I've been on about fat and muscle for 15 years, ever since that experiment in 2006, where we found these first findings. We've really been driving fat and muscle into into all ewes that we're trying to keep high reproductive rates out of. Just exploring that a bit further. This is each of these dots is a group of progeny out of our progeny test in New Zealand, run by New Zealand Merino Company, that we still manage, or more specifically, Will Gibson still manages. And so this is a group of daughters behind each of these dots. This is their size, breeding value for fat, and their condition score at first mating. So these were mated at 19 months of age. And what you see there is, as the fat breeding value, the daughters were in better condition generally. Obviously, there's a range around that line. The interesting thing is you can swap condition score, you can swap muscle out of this into this graph, and you get the same graph. So muscle and fat in merino sheep and merino dominant type sheep, muscle and fat are doing the same thing. They're both driving condition score. There is a condition score breeding value on its way. It's a research breeding value at the moment, so that's going to hone this whole process a bit further. And so there's a couple of things that condition score is driving. So it's not just driving how many lambs get scanned, so how many lambs are on board at the ovulation rate. It's also driving lamb survival, and it's doing that through lamb birth weight, really. We know from, this is lifetime wool data, we know that singles are pretty robust to the condition score of the ewe, but we know that twins are very sensitive to the ewe's condition score. The fatter that ewe is at lambing, the higher the birth weight, and therefore the more lambs are surviving. These are, again, out of a fairly sort of wool-driven genotype. These lines are higher as we get into maternals or into a more maternal merino. But the fact remains, if you've got better condition on those ewes, you're going to get more lambs on board and more lambs surviving. And genetically, you can do that through selecting for fat and muscle at the moment, and then eventually we'll have a condition score breeding value as well. And that's what we're working on. Again, 80% correlation between condition score at lambing and fat and muscle of those animals back at when they were scanned for fat and muscle as yearling. So if we want to get ewes that are volunteering to be in good condition, regardless of the season, we know that higher fat and muscle genetics will be the ones that'll do it. And we've just seen that time and time again, what they can do for ewes. This is that experiment back in 2006, which is a long time ago now. And these were ewes that were a group of Merino-Tech WA ewes. We selected half of them. We kept half of them that were in condition score 2.5 at lambing, and we had another 2.5. We had another group of ewes that condition score 3 at lambing, and we weighed all those lambs at birth. And what it showed was that under that lower nutrition environment, the ewes that had a better fat breeding value were mobilizing that fat and protecting lamb birth weight. So right out of the extreme, we had ewes that were basically delivering birth weight of lambs as if they were in the other mob, as if they'd been fed, to be half a condition score higher. Probably worth noting here that this is about where the industry sits in terms of an average for merinos. We haven't really shifted that in the last 2 decades. And so we have actually got an animal that's sitting about here. So we've got it volunteering at a much lower birth weight under a bit of nutritional restriction. And we all know that things don't always go to plan on farms, and we often can be lambing ewes lighter than we would like. And that's when fat breeding value really kicks in to protect the lamb. It also happens the same thing, but on the sire effect now. So that was the ewe effect on lamb survival. This is the sire effect. So just using a ram with higher fat breeding value, we dragged this data, or Tomo did, out of the lifetime wool data set, and because we had a range of rams used there. And so what we were able to do is go back and have a look and just say, right, of those, we had very accurate data of those lambs side by different rams, what was the survival difference between the fat breeding value. And what that data shows is a 1 mil breeding value of fat of that sire improved lamb survival by 5%. And so in a twin bearing mob, that's going to be 10% more lambs coming out of the system for 1 mil of extra fat. And that's just the sire effect. So that's just the vigor of that lamb to get up, get a drink in those colder environments. So a couple of drivers there for reproduction that we can use if we don't have those reproductive breeding values available. One of the interesting ones is head cover, and one of the, I guess, often people wonder why that is, and we probably don't really know biologically. We know that it happens across breeds. The lower the head cover, so the less wool around the eyes, less wool around the head, tends to be favourably correlated with reproduction. This is data from Johan Grief from Western Australia. These are different face covers and lambs per ewe joined. And so got a group of ewes doing 90% versus doing over 110, and that's all driven by face cover. So again, if you haven't got the data or haven't got the breeding values available, you can use this trait to help select those animals that are likely to produce ewes that have more lambs. So negatively correlated with number of lambs weaned. So the higher the face cover, the less lambs. Both conception, litter size, and favourable with, so not much going on here at ewe rearing ability, but really driving litter size with that head cover. So that's certainly something that we probably don't understand why, because these ones are just as good as foraging as these ones. They can still see what's going on, but a big difference in how many lambs they're having. And the South Africans have been all over this for a number of years. We've known that wrinkle's not that favourable with reproduction for a long time. This is a paper in 1964. There are papers before this one. I just grabbed this one as an example of the fact that we've known something for almost 60 years. I think actually in the 30s they first found it. And so if we want to improve reproduction and you're running a merino sheep, then planting them up not only reduces your need for breech modification, but it also improves your luck in terms of number of lambs weaned, a negative correlation there, negative correlated with conception, litter size, and ewe rearing ability. So all going the wrong way for wrinkle, and we've known that for a long time. And yeah, there is really only one way wrinkle needs to go in the merino sheep or merino dominant sheep. One thing to be wary of is the selection for fleece weight, and we see from depending on what the bull price is doing, we see years where we put a lot of pressure on fleece weight across the flock, and it certainly is a trait that's been improving probably faster than any other trait in the database, up there anyway, with probably that and growth. And so again, in merino sheep, we have to be careful that we're not expecting too much of the animal, and we often think that we'll just sort of, if we're cutting 6 kilos and we're cutting 3 kilos and we just cut another kilo and that's just pure money, or if we're cutting 6 another kilo, whatever it is, if we're cutting more wool, then it's just going straight into the bank balance, basically. The reality is that isn't what happens. There is a cost of growing extra wool. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have that as a breeding objective. You just need to be aware of what you're trying to achieve. And the real battle is fleece weight to body weight ratio. This is what the South Africans have been hot on for a long time. And it really does play out. So this is data we just grabbed out of the Peter Westblade Memorial Weather Trial that Craig Wilson and team run there in New South Wales. These are weathers. We've just grabbed that out of their report. Higher condition score. The higher the fleece weight to body weight ratio. So a 10% is a 60 kilo animal cutting 6 kilos. A 14% is a 60 kilo animal cutting whatever that is, 8.4 kilos. And so as we increase that ratio, we see a real drop off in condition score. So the higher the wool weight to body weight ratio goes, the lower the condition score in these weathers, and they're just cruising around doing weather things. So they're not actually producing lambs. South African data, a paper by Herselman, and across different flocks of sheep, different breeds. And this wool production potential, which is the same sort of measure, fleece weight to body weight ratio, and the ewe productivity, kilograms of lambs weaned per ewe. And in all these different flocks, the higher you drive that wool production potential, you see this drop off in that ewe productivity in terms of reproduction. So we can obviously make gain against these correlations by selecting the animals that do both, but we have to be aware that they're there. And so if we are actually going in and just selecting on fleece weight and body weight, because that's what our ram breeder is providing us, and we're pushing them up, or we might even go in and select that on our ewes, because they're the two things that are easy to measure. So we just have to be very aware that what that might be doing for our reproductive potential of our ewes. Just because a trait is easy to measure doesn't mean it's the one that we should measure or should select on. We have to be really careful that I get really nervous about people selecting on just growth weight and fleece weight, or even micron thrown in there as well, because of the impact that can have on our reproductive potential of those ewes. Fine if that's not in your breeding objective, but you can't have lambs in your breeding objective and then just select on wool traits. And there is this negative genetic correlation between fleece weight and condition score at various reproduction stages. That's out of Tate's work. There's different papers will report different numbers, but we have to be aware that that's what's going on. If we do drive up fleece weight on its own without being careful, we will reduce our genetic condition score, our genetic reproduction. And so that's something to watch. I'm not anti-wool by any means. I love the stuff, but we just have to balance out that animal and make sure we provide all the resources and the traits that are required for an animal to run in the production systems we expect them to run. So that's a bit of a summary, but a reminder that to jump on the hub, which is the hub.nextgenagri.com, and get under genetics, reproduction, and lamb survival. If you've got any questions, you've got any comments on reproduction in sheep, we'd love to see them there, and love to have an online chat there as well.